Okay. All right, so for all of you watching in TV land, this is a customized Leverage Summit Part 2 presentation for one of our top agents in the Kingwood area. So if it sounds like we're really getting specialized, in fact we are. So, all right, Feynman, it's all about you today.
All right.
Okay, so last week we talked about the structure of building an abundant team. Okay, the 8 positions on the team, the systematic process, who do you hire first, second, third, fourth, what are the specific job responsibilities for each person on the team at each stage of progression. Then we got into the specific knowledge, skills, dispositions, and performance standards for each one of those 8 positions so that you had a real clear picture of who will be a superb match for that job description. And that was actually our definition of talent. Finding talent for the position is somebody who's a superb match for the job description. So what we're going to do today is focus in on how to find talent and then attract them. And those 2 words have very specific meanings. Finding is identifying people who match the job description. Attracting is attracting them into a working relationship with you, because there's lots of talented people out there, but if they don't see value in joining your team, you don't get them. So it has to be both. Find them and then attract them. Okay? So in Feynman, because this is all about you today, we can slow down or speed up through any one of these sections so that it's extremely relevant to what you're doing. Okay? So before you go on a search for talent, you have to be prepared. And in team building, this is what preparation looks like. You have to assemble your interviewing tools. Application forms, behavioral assessment, general questions, mission, vision, values, beliefs, and goals, yours. Reference review forms, position-specific questions, position-specific tests or evaluations, win, lose, and expectations, staff development calendar, training procedures manual, and a compensation package for each of the positions. And the great news is you don't have to actually create any of this. You just have to assemble it because all of it's in the manual. Okay, it's kind of like last week. Everything, all the knowledge, skills, dispositions, performance standards, all provided. Okay? All right. So finding talent, as I just mentioned, finding is locating it, attracting is moving them into a working relationship with you. Basically, allowing a person to self-discover that their aspirations, career aspirations, are going to be met in a working relationship with you. That's the foundation for a long-term win-win relationship. So in locating talent, here's a whole bunch of places you can find it. Your competition, other real estate offices, real estate schools, network sources within your sphere of influence, perhaps someone you've sold a home to, allied resources, mortgage title, inspection companies, career placement services, local universities or colleges, advancement from within, and that's specifically within your team. So once you have, for example, a transaction coordinator, that individual may want to specialize as a listing coordinator. They may eventually step up and become the team leader. Okay, a buyer specialist might graduate to being a listing specialist. A headhunter, internet job sites, monster.com, Craigslist, I've heard many agents say is a very fruitful place to find team members, and the newspaper, which could be paper or online. Okay? Ready or not, you should always be on the lookout for talent. Okay? So whether you feel like your team is to the point now, for example, that you're ready to bring on a buyer's agent or not, if you find talent, then we would say make the hire. And the reason is talent will always provide you with a 30% plus return on investment. Okay? Talent will own their position, grow the position, and put you cash flow positive on that position if they're truly talent. Okay? All right. So attracting talent. That one page was on finding. The rest of this is on attracting. Okay? And let me just say, in all honesty, it's a brutal process. Because what we coach is a 12-step process built around 3 interviews. And this is the snapshot of the whole process right here. I've also put it on the on the easel so that once we blow past page 51, you'll have that little visual in front of you. But the first interview has 4 steps. In the second interview, you're going to accomplish 6 things. And then there is actually a third interview. In the first interview process, you could be interviewing any number of candidates. It could be 15, 20 people who come in for an interview. Only 3 are going to make it to interview 2. You're going to interview the top 3 candidates a second time. And then from those 3, only 2 will make it to the third interview. And at the third interview, you'll make a hire. At least you'll make an offer. Informed, intelligent decision about who you want. Okay? During the entire process, all one of these 12 steps, you're basically on what we call a red flag mission. You're really not trying to discover, is this person a good fit, but you're trying to look for what would make this person not a good fit. They're easier to spot that way. Because most people who come in for an interview are going to look good, sound good, smell good, and have some baseline set of people skills. And it's very common for interviewers to kind of fall in love with the people that they interview. One of my old bosses used to say, if you spend enough time with anybody, you'll start to like them. Okay? And by the time you get through this process, you will have spent a lot of time with them. So what you're trying to do is not fall in love with a person, but fall in love with the process, which will yield the right person. And part of this process is always looking for red flags, something that doesn't quite fit. That doesn't mean they're automatically eliminated from the process, but when you see something, perhaps they don't have the requisite knowledge, or perhaps they were a little hesitant about providing past job references. Okay? Those are red flags, and that's a cue to you to stay into curiosity. Okay, so stop, camp out right there, go deep on that until you're fully satisfied that the issue can be resolved or the issue cannot be resolved, and at that point you can stop the interview process, okay, gracefully. But you know that that person's not going to be a hire candidate. Okay? So interview 1, here we go. The first of the 12 steps is to have them complete a general application. And again, we provide a sample for you in the material. But before you even meet with them, you're going to have them complete that as they arrive at the office. And I'll give you the dialogue for that in just a minute. They're going to complete the application, reference sheet, job history, and behavioral assessment before you ever show up. Okay, so they're going to invest some time, probably about 30 minutes. Okay, so here's how it works. When the person arrives at the office for the interview, I'd have them come here. You're going to have the receptionist greet them. You know, hi Susie, Feynman's expecting you. This is where you'll be meeting as they usher them to a conference room. So set your things down and make yourself at home. Hey, before Feynman comes in, could you please take some time and complete these forms? There's the stack of documents. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to open the door and ask me. When you're finished, just let me know and I'll inform Feynman. May I offer you something to drink? It would be my pleasure. Okay, so you got to get the front desk on your hiring team. And I've done this many, many times, and they're usually thrilled to be part of it. Okay? All right. So here are the forms. Again, I said you don't have to create any of this, just assemble it, and it's already been provided. So here's the general application that all team member candidates are going to complete. It starts with their personal information, their education. Now, many of them are going to walk in with a resume. Okay? And that's fantastic, and they may even object when they see the stack of papers the receptionist gives them. But just have her explain, or him explain, if necessary, that this general application is a very organized way of us gathering all the data that we need. And we're happy to receive the resume, but we need this completed also. Okay? Education. I'm on page 54. 5 personal references. Now, most people are not going to walk in with contact information on 5 personal references. Well, they probably will have them in their phone. But I would coach people when you schedule the interview that you're going to be asking for 5 personal references, as well as job history going back 5 positions, or an appropriate number of years, 5 years or whatever, so that they come in with that information. They sign at the bottom giving you permission to contact these references. Okay? Page 55 begins the employment history form, current or most recent employer, all the basic data, but this is not so basic in the middle. The questions that we're asking about the positions they've held, their responsibilities, accomplishments, lessons learned, most enjoyable moments or activities, least enjoyable moments or activities, which might be the most telling item on the page, reason for leaving, supervisor name, phone number, permission to contact, okay? It's just one page on each of their employers, but this is going to be very telling information, okay? Page 56, the only thing that's going to change on these next few pages is employment history form number. Last page was 1, this is 2, there's 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there's all your 5 forms. Now, once they have completed all of those things, you're going to go ahead and enter the room. You're going to be notified, the receptionist will come and get you. So by the way, we've made it past step 1 and we're on step 2. So far, the candidate's done all the work. So here you go. Hi, I'm Feynman. It's a pleasure meeting you. Did you have any problems finding the office? You're just breaking the ice, warming the room up a little bit. It's kind of warm, wet, cold, nice, whatever. Kind of wet would be appropriate today out there, isn't it? So after you've introduced yourself and kind of warmed up the room a little bit, you want to have this set the stage dialogue. You're basically going to let them know what they're in for, so that as the conversation unfolds, they'll have a grid to place it in, okay? So I want you to understand that I'm extremely serious when it comes to adding people to my team. My goal is to form win-win relationships with the people I associate with, as I feel only good things can come from those types of relationships. Would you agree? Great. My approach to hiring is a 3-interview approach. So again, you're setting expectations right up front. And so what I would like to do today is simply get to know as much about you as I can and also tell you a little bit about me. That's a very telling sentence because you're really not going to get into job duties or job description today in the first interview. It really is going to be a personal, seeing if there's some chemistry there, okay? Most of our meeting today will consist of me asking you questions and then listening to your answers. I hope you don't mind if I take notes. Today there are no right or wrong answers, and I want you to know that what gets said in here remains in here. Therefore, I want you to be as open and honest with me as you feel you can be. Is that fair? Okay? All right. Now, it says here, review the employment history forms with the candidate in addition to asking the general questions. And what you want to do is just glance through their greatest accomplishments, their responsibilities, their learning lessons, that type thing. See if there's anything there that piques your interest that you want to go deeper on. Okay? So here are the general questions that you would ask of all candidates for any position on your team. And you're going to see there's a bunch of them. Okay? You don't necessarily have to ask all. In fact, you're setting yourself up for a 2-3+ hour interview if you do, which that may be okay. But here we get started. Tell me about you. Kind of the forward. Family, occupation, recreation, dreams, formal education. Now here we start to get a little different. Reading habits. Complex situations where you had to learn quickly. Are you computer illiterate? Describe the programs you're extremely capable in. Looking back in your career, where were you your most and least successful jobs? These are not typical interview questions. I mean, they are at very high levels, maybe CEO levels, but I've never been a CEO and I've been interviewed many times, never been asked these kind of questions. So you'll notice in parenthesis after each question, there is a word, intelligence, education, technology, track record. That speaks to the specific knowledge, skill, disposition, or personal character of the individual. So you kind of understand what you're looking for when you ask the question. Okay? Page 62 goes on with more questions. Great ones, by the way. Page 63. More questions. General questions. Page 64. Great ones. So you, again, go through and highlight the ones that you want to dig into. Once answered, The above questions may require follow-up questions. Okay, if they say something a little bit strange, or if their vision of a perfect job doesn't really seem to match what you're offering, go a little bit deeper, okay, until you're fully satisfied with their answer. And if it's a red flag, you don't need to go any further if they can't resolve it. Okay? So once you've asked the final general question, right here, what's the one thing you're most proud of, and you're intrigued enough with the candidate that you want to continue, then it's time for you to reciprocate and tell the candidate about you. So you've been asking lots of questions, now you're going to reciprocate, okay? The purpose of your story is to reveal, very important, that you have the character, strength, success, performance track record that the candidate is going to feel comfortable identifying with. Okay, they're like, yeah, I can see myself spending a lot of time with this person. This person's been successful. My career is going to be in good hands in relationship with him. That's what you want them to self-discover. Okay? Tell your story in chronological order. And literally, I was born in a log cabin, you know, on the other side of the tracks and blah, blah, blah. But you're specifically including elements of your personal story that speak to character, values, strength, success. Why are you the person that you are? Why are you so successful that now you have a need to build a team? Those are the lessons you're pulling out. Okay? By the way, when you cover your mission, vision, values, beliefs, and goals, here's just a little quick reminder of what that is. Okay? The purpose or intent of your business, the image of your business fulfilling its purpose, what you stand for, the basic business rules that you operate by, and goals, the key benchmarks you expect to achieve. Having clear goals when you're having a conversation with a candidate is really going to inspire confidence that you know where you're headed. Okay? You know, I'm the only team. I closed 35 transactions last year on my own. However, I want to take that to 45 this year and 55 the year after, and that's why I'm bringing on team members, that type thing. Now, once you go through, this is the transitional phrase that introduces this whole section. Now that I feel I know a lot about you, I think it's only fair that I tell you a little bit about me. Okay? However, let me say this. At any point in this first interview, if you come to the realization this person is not a candidate, you can gracefully cut it off right there. And you should, for their benefit and yours. And we'll give you some dialogue for that. Okay, so ending meeting one. If you decide to end the meeting early, okay, or decide the candidate will not be a good fit for your team by the time you get to the end of the interview, here's your dialogue. I really appreciate you coming in today. Again, my purpose with meeting one is simply to put a name with a face and ask a few questions. I will be contacting the top 3 candidates for a second meeting sometime next week. Thanks, and again, it was a pleasure meeting you. So you're not throwing them under the bus, telling them they're an awful person. You're just saying, I'm just starting the process. I'm early in the process. Okay? We will circle back and close the loop with them, though, next week. If you decide the candidate is a good fit and you want to proceed, here's your dialogue around that. And essentially what this says is you're letting them know you're going to be contacting the top 3 candidates next week. But in preparation for that, you're going to ask them to go ahead and schedule, preferably on the weekend, a time for a conversation between you and each one of their personal references. Okay, so it's pretty grueling at this point. You could potentially have 5 or 6 candidates with promise, each setting 5 phone conversation interviews for you over the weekend. So it is a massive commitment. And you let them know that once you get through this process, you'll be calling back the top 3. Okay? If we stopped right here, we've already done far more than 99% of people hiring out there. Okay? So here's the reference check. When you call on your top candidates, however many that is, 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates, here are the questions, the dialogue and the questions. Hi, my name's Feynman. I was given your name by Susie. As a personal reference, I'd like to ask you a few questions. And again, Susie set up this conversation. She scheduled it, so should be no surprises. Okay? Now, you're also going to call their past employment references. If they worked at a large company, you're probably not going to get anywhere. They typically will not give out reference information because of legal liabilities. But if it's a small company, you might. And there's some great questions here. What are Susie's strengths? What are her weaknesses or areas of improvement? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Susie's overall job performance? What would have made it a 10? Or if they said she was a 10, what would have made it a 10 plus? You know, how can Susie take it to the next level? How do you think Susie would fit in the job that we're hiring for? Is there anything in the job description that concerns you? How can I best lead or manage Susie? Is there anything else I should know about her? Okay? Pretty extensive. All right. Once you get through all that, you've interviewed 20 candidates, you've followed up on personal and business references with the top portion, you're going to invite the top 3 back for a second interview. Okay? So now we're down to interview number 2. Big phase 2 in the process. Here's your call to the top 3 candidates. You know, hi, Susie, this is Frank. Congratulations, you made the cut. I'd like to meet with you again on this date and time. But we are going to close the loop, as I said, with all the others. We're not just going to leave them hanging. And here's your dialogue around that. Basically, we've offered we're going to move on with someone else, even though we don't know specifically who that is yet. Okay? All right. So at the beginning of interview 2, you're going to do the same thing you did in the beginning of interview 1, which is kind of set the stage, set the agenda for what's going to happen in this conversation. Hi, Susie. It's great to see you again. In today's meeting, we're going to get job specific. Interview 1 was more personal. Job 2 is about the position. Interview 2 is about the position. I'm going to first start with, you guessed it, more questions. Then we'll review your reference comments and your behavior graph. Finally, we'll talk about mutual expectations in the job itself. Sound good? Again, there are no right or wrong answers, only your answers. I'll again ask you to be as open and honest with me as you can be. Okay? So now we get into the specific position questions for each position on your team. By the way, these questions, a lot of them came from Bradford Smart Book's top grading. I meant to bring that book with me today. Feynman, you don't need it. It's about that fat. Okay. But it's extremely interesting. Just know that the questions that we're about to go through have a lot of science behind them and a lot of results. Okay? So you'll see at the top of each page, these are the position-specific questions for the listing specialist. And so some of them will appear to be general, difficult challenges you've overcome, biggest risks you've taken, etc. But then they do get into more presentational questions. Is this a person who's comfortable with people, being in the spotlight? Are they a leader? Okay. Are they persuasive? So these questions will get into some of that. Okay. Tell me about your real estate career. How would you rate yourself in public speaking? Very important for a listing specialist. Okay. We're on the 3rd page of questions. So there were 3 total on the listing specialist. Now, on page 76, we start the buyer specialist questions. Some of these are very similar at the beginning. They're the same. But then they start to differentiate as you go forward into the specific duties of a buyer specialist. Okay? Now, page 80 is when we get into the transaction coordinator. You may recall transaction coordinator is the first hire that we recommend that you make. And these duties will ultimately be split between the listing and the closing specialist. But for either of those 3 positions, these questions will work. Okay? And you might expect the first one to be, how detail-oriented are you? You want a perfectionist in these positions, right? Because we're not perfectionists. All right? So the questions really focus on supervisor-supervisee relationships and their disposition to do the type of work required. Okay, page 83 starts the marketing coordinator questions. 3.5 pages of questions there. By the way, all of these end with, is there anything I should have asked you but didn't? Which I think is a fantastic question. I think about the mishires that I've made on both ends, as the person hiring and the person being hired. And if that question had been asked, I might have been saved a lot of grief.
When I was an accountant,
yes.
one of my managers, he would always end the conversation with the CEO or whoever he was speaking with,
yes.
table, whatever. He would say, "Is there anything else that you would like to add to what we talked about?"
Yes.
We didn't talk about something like that.
Yes.
Which is really a great question.
It is. Because it might be the question that they've been wanting to get on the table the whole time. Yeah, okay, great. Administrative assistant, page 87, which is our next to last hire, 2.5 pages. And then finally, page 90, questions for the runner. Yes, we even interview the person who's going to be stalking the flyers and putting the signs out. But oh, by the way, also bird dogging FSBOs, doing some lead generation for us. So we have some questions very specifically for them. Okay. Blemishes on your driving record, very important question for a runner. Okay. Now, once you get through the position-specific questions, we're going to ask that you test each individual to see if they actually have the knowledge and skills to perform in the position. And these position-specific tests, in the case of a buyer or seller specialist, is to make a presentation. Okay? Because you're probably going to be hiring experience at those two positions, probably. So buyer specialist, hey, let's hear your buyer presentation. Let's pretend like I'm a buyer prospect we're meeting for the first time. Walk me through that. What does that sound like? Listing specialist, you're just sitting down at the kitchen table or coming in the front door of somebody that you believe needs to sell their home. What does that look like? Let me hear it. They should be able to drop into that. Okay? Also some contract questions, if they're going to be dealing with contracts. Computer skills for a transaction coordinator. Phone skills for an administrative assistant. Okay? Ring, ring. And obviously you have a specific way you want them to answer the phone, but let's hear what they would drop into naturally and how comfortable they are in that role. Okay? So now we're at stage 6, the position-specific test, so we're halfway through the process. Hasn't been too grueling so far, has it?
There were a lot of questions that I wouldn't ask. I would be more brief.
Yes.
But it was good to have the options there.
Yes, yes. Interview 2, it says it in the notes, and I didn't really go through it, but you set the expectation it's going to be a 3-hour interview, a 3-hour process for your top 3 candidates. So it's pretty grueling, okay? Now, on the reference review, what we recommend is that you get a pad and an easel and put on here, big cross, just like you see on the screen, a summary of everybody that you talk to of the candidate's strengths, weaknesses, job performance, and best ways to manage. So you'll have multiple comments in each of these boxes. And what you're going to do is simply talk through them. This is what your references said. How do you feel about that? Do you agree with that? Okay? Is this fair that they identified this as a weakness? What have you been working on? Or if you agree, what have you done to overcome that weakness? Okay? So just go deep until you're satisfied that the person's learning based. And then the behavioral review, we're also going to suggest that you have a chart, you can blow it up, that shows where they fell, if you're using a DISC test or an Alessandra test, where their behavioral profile fits and how that matches with the profile for the position. So, for example, here's what the positions look like. And this is the Alessandra graph. Have you used any behavioral testing before?
Well, I've
gone through it yourself? Yes, yes. So they're all pretty much the same, but in the Alessandra, the O is for someone who's open, S is more self-contained, more reserved, keeps emotions to themselves, an internal processor as opposed to an external or verbal processor. The D is for someone who is directive. It's not directive, it's something else. But it's a driver personality. You understand that. Somebody who wants to be out front, making the decisions.
Military guy.
Military guy. Yeah, there you go. Whereas as the I tends to be more sensitive, probably more people-oriented as opposed to production-oriented. And so different profiles seem to do better in different positions. You would expect your listing specialist to be somewhat of a driver personality, right? It's a sales position. They need to be out there making it happen, making it rain. Your buyer specialist is more of a people person. They're going to be hanging out with these people in their car. They need to be very open in their personality style. Listing and closing coordinators don't have to be people, and they don't have to be real directive or driven. They just have to be able to take direction, okay? And be detailed oriented, be perfectionist. So this is kind of the behavioral profiles you're looking for. Now, let's say you're hiring a buyer specialist, and they show up over here. You know, more like a listing specialist than a buyer specialist. That's a red flag. Does that mean we throw them out? Not necessarily. It just means we're curious. We want to go deep into this and make sure that we've got a good fit. And it is possible sometimes people test differently on different days, or perhaps they came out of a most recent job experience where they were required to operate out here. And that's what's kind of showing up. But everything else is consistent in what you've heard about them and what they've said about themselves, that they fit a buyer specialist pattern. So you just want to, don't eliminate them, but be curious about anomalies or red flags. Marketing coordinator, administrative assistant, team leader, and runner. Preferred behavioral styles. And by the way, the questions for this test are included in the manual also. So you've got everything you need to do this. But you're going to put a little graph up with the chart, the preferred behavioral marked and their actual marked, and see what kind of match you have. Okay? Once you get through all of that, if you're like, this person really seems to be a good fit, everything is lining up consistently, then you need to test their long-term vision, long-term career vision. Because this job might be a great fit for them immediately, but if it doesn't match long-term, that's not a good situation. So you just simply ask, career-wise, where would you like to be in 5 years? Okay? And how they answer, a very broad question. They may answer it financially. They may answer it geographically. They may answer it positionally. You don't know how that's going to come out, but that's going to be very telling. What's important to you about doing that? What's important to you about making $65,000 a year? What's important to you about being the team leader of your group? Okay, what's important to you about being part of a team? Whatever they say, you want to go deeper on it. Okay? Or what would you hope to accomplish in the next 5 years? What's important to you about accomplishing that? Okay? If you're interested in a long-term relationship, not a short-term fix. Mishires are the most expensive business mistakes. Because not only is it very costly to hire and then fire and then rehire, but you've missed all the lost productivity in between. Not just for the position, but for yourself and the distraction that involves. So even though this is a grueling process, it's actually highly efficient. Because if you make this commitment, you go through the process and you get somebody who's with you 4, 5, 8, 10 years, it was worth it. There's a good return on that time investment. Okay? So now we're at step 10. We've gone through the long-term career vision. It fits. So now we're going to have the win-lose dialogue and mutual expectations conversation. Okay? Here's how that sounds. Let's switch gears for a moment. It's been my experience that conflict only arises when expectations differ. Would you agree? How can they disagree? So now you're going to have an expectations conversation, right? Because we don't want to set ourselves up for conflict. So with that in mind, how does someone win with you, And how does someone lose with you? And we give you a page in the manual that says your opinions matter, and you're going to be able to record what they say right there. How does somebody win with me? They treat me with respect. They pay me well. They give me flexibility to pick up my kid from school if they're sick because my spouse works out of town. You know, that's what you're looking for. Okay, let me share with you, reciprocate, how someone wins and loses with me. So now you're sharing that with them. And because you already know the answers, you've got them typed out, and you can just share that with them in a written form and then go through it point by point. And again, we give you one of those, but you'll want to customize one just for yourself. And a sample might be, how do you win with me? If your responsibilities call for you to be here at 8:30, you're here at 8:30. You are at your desk, computer on, productive at 8:30. Okay, whatever yours is, make sure that that's what's on there. Okay. Expect from you dialogue. What do you feel I have the right to expect from you as a member of the team? And again, you're going to write their answers on the Your Opinions Matter form. Now, let me share with you what I feel I have the right to expect from you. Okay? And you go through your expectations. Now, what do you feel you have the right to expect from me as your team leader? Write it down. Let me share with you, do I feel you have the right to expect from me as your team leader? So you're just getting it all out on the table. And that's going to be influenced by past experiences that you've had, good and bad. You don't want to repeat the bad, you want to duplicate the good. All right? So here's the little form templates that you can use for that. How does someone win and lose with you? What do you feel I have the right to expect from you as a member of our team? What do you feel you have the right to expect from me as the owner? Okay, so this is what you're taking notes on the whole time they're talking. Okay? Now, here's what you're going to have already completed and give to them. You win with me by, you lose with me by. Okay? Does this make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to list it all